evening. What are we thinking of the new Formula One season so far? I really enjoyed that race. I'm I'm excited to talk about it with you actually because the Bahrain GP was very disappointing. I think most people agree on that. If you disagree, please let me know because I'm really interested in what people thought of that race. But for me, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was much more exciting and there's a lot more to talk about. So yeah, here I am. I'm looking forward to talking about it with you. It was another domination by Red Bull, and especially Max. What is there to say about them? I was going to say he's in the form of his life, but it feels like he's been in the form of his life for the last 3 years, so, I think this is just his average, to be honest now, which is terrifying. But I want to talk about Red Bull in general because of how brilliantly Perez is performing as well currently. To be just competing with Max Verstappen, who's clearly a once-in-a-generation talent, immediately one of the best of all time. I think, it's great to see Perez back up there, and I hope he can stay consistently there for the rest of the season. Which I know sounds quite boring and will, in terms of entertainment, that's not what we want. Just, Red Bull 1-2 for the rest of the season, but on a human level, I do really want Perez to be able to stay up there, because it was hard to watch last season, and I was sceptical when Red Bull renewed his contract. Did they just keep him on? I can't remember if his contract was actually ending. Maybe you'll know and can correct me on that. But I wasn't sure it was wise to keep him on for this season. But I'm delighted that he's proven me wrong because, I really want to see him perform well, and it's not nice to see him back up there where he belongs, because he has the talent, and he's just incredibly unfortunate that he's up against Max. And then we've gone to Ferrari, where before I move on to the star of the race, I want to praise Leclerc because he had a very quiet race and he's had a very quiet start to the season, but he's been driving really, really well, as we know he can do. So well done to him on the consistency, which he was lacking before. He was always, mostly the quicker driver between him and Carlos, but Carlos was always consistent, which is what kept him so close to Charles. But now it seems like Leclerc is upping his consistency, which is the main thing, and it's really nice to see him on the podium again. And then we move on to Ollie Behm. What a man, just 18 years old, performing that well in a Ferrari. 7th place, I thought if he could get points, that is a miraculous drive. A clean race is all he must be after. Well, he's probably after a lot more because he seems to be quite hard on himself, like Leclerc was during that part of his career as well. So I don't know if it's just a young Ferrari thing to be quite harsh on yourself, but, I suppose we're all our own harshest critics. But he did an amazing job. I can't stress enough how much I want to see him in a top seat, if not in Ferrari, just in a permanent, deserving seat in the future, because he really does. He has earned it, just with that drive alone, as Liam Lawson did. I really want to see those two in top teams in the future, and I'm sure we will. There's no doubt in my mind that we will. Amazing job to miss the first 2 practice sessions, just to have 1 single hour of driving before qualifying. Absolutely amazing job. Congratulations to him. Then Mercedes. You probably know by now that I'm a Lewis fan, and it's really difficult to keep bringing my hopes up for each race weekend when I just know they're going to be like battling for 5th and 7th pretty much. I have to praise Russell because he's been outperforming Lewis for the entirety of this weekend and is much more on Lewis's level this season by the looks of things. compared to last season where he was more consistently behind Lewis by quite some margin, actually. So really good to see them back on level playing field, really, because they are kind of. I think Russell does have the talent to challenge Lewis, and he's shown that this weekend. So congratulations to him. Difficult to watch again for Lewis, but praise to Piastri as well for holding off Lewis for that long. No, sorry, it was Piastri holding off Russell, wasn't it? Yeah, and then, sorry, Lewis was battling Lando for the duration of the race, pretty much. Yeah, great defending from the McLaren guys. They're clearly very tight on pace, those two teams. I was thinking actually that it was going to be quite an easy third place for McLaren because of their consistency, and Mercedes are consistent, but they just seem to be consistently slightly slower, battling for 5th and 7th, whereas McLaren seem to be closer to Ferrari. But this race gave me a bit more hope that we're going to get a closer battle for at least 3rd in the championship. Oh, we're clinging on for whatever we can, guys, at this point. Then Aston Martin, really good job from Fernando again, extracting all he could out from that car. And a nasty crash from Stroll. I don't want to berate him too much because it was a driver error. It was a tiny mistake with severe consequences. But he was so shaken up by it, and it was quite a scary incident. Obviously caused a safety car, but it was a big impact. So all there is to say about that event is we're glad that Stroll is okay. Yeah, he looked really shaken up and disappointed with himself for making that mistake, but I'm just glad he's okay, and he walked away from it unharmed. Yeah, that was a big relief seeing him walk out of the car. And then we go on to Haas, who I think, despite that they never have an uneventful race, Haas, they always win for entertainment, but I don't think they can be disappointed with that result, and I don't think they can be disappointed with their performances so far this season. I think they're consistently, at the top end of the midfield, which is incredible because I think the top 10 is pretty much taken up with the top 3 teams, with Aston and McLaren now in there. I think, Haas are on the edge of that. They're not far off. They seem to have solved their tyre issues, which, as we predicted from last season, would fix a lot of their issues because their pace over one lap was great, that they could just never hold on to it. Magnussen has upped his pace. He seems to be much more on the level of Nico, which is great to see because he was really far off last season, and Nico was the star driver, but they seem to be on a much more level playing field this season, which is great. But I have to talk about Magnussen's incidents with the stewards. I'm sorry, but what are the stewards doing this race? They seem to be prioritising the completely wrong things. They gave Magnussen, okay, he did deserve penalties, I feel, for, he gained a position off track, he made an overtake by going off track, sure. 5-second penalty, easy, that's the default, and it wasn't even severe. That there was no exceptional circumstance that warranted it an extra penalty. It was completely unnecessary to have 10 seconds for that. And 10 seconds for the Albon incident, which I can see more because it seemed like a bigger impact, but I don't know, the consequences were so minimal that I just don't feel like it was a 10 seconds penalty. Again, the default is 5 seconds for causing a collision, that's it, and that's what he did. I don't see what justifies the extra 5 seconds on top of that. And just to make it even more nonsensical, they were giving these penalties out 30 laps into the race, having just noted Lando's jump start. And then even later saying no investigation necessary. I'm sorry, what? What is that about? What? It's a clear jump start. It wasn't even insignificant. It was quite a way ahead of the grid spot, and he hasn't come to a complete halt before he got going again. He was still moving when the lights went out. It just slowed down a bit. That was a slam dunk in my opinion, and in the commentators' opinions as well, and I expect in the majority of the general public's opinion. So it seems like the stewards are in the minority of this, which is a shame because they obviously have the power. Yeah, Norris really got away with one there. Anyway, stewards rant over. I hope I don't have any more for the rest of the season because the FIA seem to be more consistent this season with their ruling, which was good to see in this race. In Bahrain, but yeah, worrying signs in this race. Stake had some pit stop issues again, which is worrying because, initially in the first race, it was just like, oh God, how unlucky is Bottas to have another 50-second pit stop. And then I heard in the weekend warm-up, I think, on the official F1 channel, that they have like a certain kind of wheel nut or something, or they've done something to the wheels that make it so that the wheel guns can't quite turn the wheel nut as it should, and it ends up causing damage to the nut, as we saw Bottas have in Mercedes in Monaco a few years ago, which is what's causing these issues, and they've been saying that they've been having them in practice as well, and they know why it is, they just need to fix it, which is really worrying for me because if it's happening in practice, it's happened 2 races in a row. When's it going to stop? It's going to keep happening until they fix it. So that's a really worrying sign for Stake, and really unlucky for Joe. But hey, it takes Alpine off the back row of the grid for a race. So some solace for them. And then finally, I just want to talk about Ricciardo, who had a disappointing race. He was consistently off of Tsunoda's pace for the entire weekend, which is unlike him and quite disappointing. Yeah, I don't know if he was affected by last race's shenanigans. Their team radio being the highlight of the Bahrain GP. That was the most eventful thing about that race. And then he had just a really clumsy spin on the final couple of laps at turn 1. It was, slow speed, just clumping the curb too hard on old tyres. It just spun round. Yeah, really. Obviously, it didn't really cost him anything. He wasn't in the point. He wasn't fighting for anything. It didn't have any lasting effect on the race, but just really difficult to watch. And I hope he can bounce back next race because this was really unlike Daniel this race. And obviously, we all love to see Daniel do well. And we know he has the pace, he has the talent to be up there, ahead of Tsunoda, really, if not at least battling him. So, yeah, I hope he can bounce back. Overall, though, I enjoyed the race. As I said, much more exciting than Bahrain. It wasn't a corker, maybe 6, 7 out of 10. But there were some good battles. There was a bit of a dull stint for about maybe 25 laps in the middle, but the last 20 laps in the start were exciting. There were consistent battles, thanks to Magnussen, really, causing a massive train from about 12th to the back of the grid. But there were some good battles with some lunges from Albon and Behrman, the Williams and RBs going at it for, quite a few laps. There were consistently good battles throughout that race. And it's just a really enjoyable track to watch cars go around. It's really fast. The direction was really good this weekend, by the way. Usually it's rough, but the shots we were getting and some new camera angles we were being treated to really highlighted the speed and the closeness of the walls. It was, really exciting to watch. So, great track, and it's a great driver's track, it's great in qualifying. Take a shot every time I say great. I need to think of some synonyms for that word, dear God. Anyway, yeah, great track. Oh, I just said it again. Jesus. Amazing track. Sketchy morals in racing in Saudi Arabia. You know, the whole We Racers 1 thing seems to have been swept under the carpet. But aside from that, I enjoy the circuit. And it's, yeah, really enjoyable to watch cars going around it. And we had some good battles, which we don't always expect in these narrow kind of street circuits, but the DRS is powerful. It's with really high speed, which helps. Lots of heavy braking turns. So yeah, really enjoyable watch. I hope you enjoyed it too. Please let me know your thoughts. I'm always interested to know what you thought of the races. Yeah, let's have a discussion about it. Yeah, other than that, congratulations to Max again. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very soon. Goodbye.